over a year and their weight. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Venus Williams, at age 45, became the second oldest woman to win a tour-level singles match. The Compton native defeated Peyton Stearns in straight sets Tuesday, 6-3 and 6-4 in the first round of the D.C. Open in Washington, D.C. It was the first singles win for Venus since the Cincinnati Open in August of 2023. Tuesday's match was also the first time Venus had been on the court since the Miami Open on March 19, 2024. Martina Navratilova holds the record as the oldest woman to win a tour-level singles match. Navratilova was 47 when she won a match at Wimbledon in 2004. Venus showed she still has some game. One of her serves was clocked at 112 miles per hour. Venus, a seven-time Grand Slam champion, was given a wildcard exemption to play in the D.C. Open. She advanced to the second round on Thursday against the number 5 seed in the tournament, Magdalena Frech of Poland. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
At KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time. Whenever news breaks, while we're on the air, it's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580, and we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. And I thank you, thank you.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Today is Wealthy Wednesdays, where S. Todd Yeary is our very special guest in the second hour. But in this hour, our very special guest is Atiba Madian. I'll come forward in just a moment with his introduction. I want to begin with two personal stories about a concept that I want you to understand for today's show. I was very young. My brother Jonathan was very young. My brother Yusuf was very young. I was attending high school in Washington, D.C., and I would come home for some weekends, some spring breaks, some periods of time. But at high school in Washington, D.C., I really began to figure out who I was as a person and as an individual. When I came home one Thanksgiving, my brothers and I got into a little skirmish and a little fight, which happens amongst brothers. My mother came back in the room after she heard us fighting, and she knows that she did not tolerate any such fights. She then asked my brother Yusuf to tell the truth. How did this begin? Yusuf turned to my mother and said, It's Jesse's fault. I said, Mama, Yusuf is lying on me. That didn't happen. It isn't my fault. It's his fault. It's Jonathan's fault. So Mama punished me for it. My father came in later and said, Yusuf, what happened? He said, in that moment, I thought, Jesse's going back to Washington in a couple of days, but I have to live with Jonathan. So let him go back to Washington, but I have to live with Jonathan. This dude right here is going to beat me up later. It's called deflection. On another occasion, I must admit, my mother called me fella. My father called me fella. Everybody called me fella when I was growing up. I was a bad fella. I can't remember what it was that I did, but I'm sure it was something that was off the charts, off the cuff, whatever. But on this particular occasion, my mother turned to me and my father turned to me, realizing that I had done wrong. And I sought to deflect it by coming up with another story that simply was not true. Deflection is a part of who we are as human beings when we don't want to own our behavior. When we're looking for someone to blame, and with blame, whenever blame is present, there's always shame, there's always guilt that accompanies blame. Shame, blame, and guilt are part of the cycle of life, and so are resentments and regrets. That's what it means to be human. It separates us in the human space. But when the President of the United States engages in deflection, it becomes all too apparent with huge consequences for the spirit energy of the Republic. Huge. And so while Washington, D.C. is now roiling in the release of the Epstein files and its consequences for the President of the United States and the Justice Department, the Department of Justice, the court system, and the truth, most importantly, the president is now engaging in deflection. This kind of deflection undermines the faith that the people have in the government, in its processes, in its systems of operation. So rather than owning his behavior, President Trump is now pointing fingers at different issues. They call it presidential triangulation. It's another way of saying wag the dog. That is, if the media is focusing its attention on a particular subject matter of inquiry, like the Epstein files, if I can create a distraction so large, so great, so grand, that the media turns its attention away from the Epstein files to other issues, then I will have accomplished my goal of deflection. The tragic consequences of presidential deflection can, as the movie depicted, can lead to bombings of foreign countries, can lead to wars, can lead to assassinations, can lead to turning the attention of the people away from issues that are at hand. We saw some of it when Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel, for example, had been convicted and alleged to have committed crimes on the ground, and his overwhelming response in some parts of the Middle East, deflection. Well, presidents of the United States engage in similar deflection. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, we're going to talk about the AI video posted by President Donald Trump showing the arrest of Barack Obama as a major distraction. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With the KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorial, I'm Martin Gordon, chair of the Pasadena Community Coalition. Recently, I listened to a Tavis Smiley Show conversation with James Farr. At one point, James said something that caught me off guard, not because it wasn't true, but because it is. Black Altadena is gone. I know it may seem stupid and non-productive, but I stopped in that moment listening to Tavis and James. I broke down and cried. In the back of my mind, I told myself we can bring it back like it was. But James Farr's reality check hit me like a ton of bricks. My community is being murdered. I said murdered, not by the Altadena Eaton Canyon fire, but by the people we elect to protect us, and by greedy and gatekeeping nonprofits who cannot see the forest for the trees. For the first time since the fire, I truly feel and understand my wife's inconsolable pain. Because I'm struggling to find a path to recovery and at least some form of normalcy. My community is crumbling right in front of my face. Lack of funding to rebuild is slowly destroying us. Many of us can no longer hold out, and developers are gobbling up our property. When I hear voices like Tavis Smiley and James Farr speak truth to power on KBLA Talk 1580, it reminds me that we're not crazy, just unheard. Make no mistake here, KBLA delegation, this is war, and we the people of Black Altadena are losing. It's like waiting for reparation. Not gonna happen, brother. In this new orange man world, no one, no entity is persuaded by right or wrong. There is no consequence for doing the wrong thing and no accolades or support for doing the right thing. Will war-torn Black Altadena survive? Your guess is as good as mine. But what have I got to lose? I'm in my 70s and don't have time to wait. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once suggested that riots break out when people have no hope. But there's nothing left to burn down in Altadena. I wish I could say I remain hopeful that my beloved community will rise again like a phoenix from the ashes. I wish I could. With a KBLA Talk 1580 guest editorial, I'm Martin Gordon, chair of the Pasadena Community Coalition. Pasadena Community Coalition at gmail.com. Reach out to me. As always, we welcome your feedback.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. My very special guest in this hour is Atiba Madian. Atiba is a former deputy executive director for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. He is a strategic alliance consultant and president of Party Politics USA, or US. He's worked as a TV political contributor for BNC News, The Heat, In the Know with Mo, The Leslie Marshall Show, iHeartRadio, GovExec, 96.3 WHUR, and the One America News Network. He most recently was a guest host on Rising, an American daily news and opinion web series produced by Washington, D.C. political newspaper, The Hill. In 2020, Atiba released his first novel, Saving Grace, a political thriller. Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thanks, Jesse. It's great to be here.
Presidential triangulation. I have another very, very small for you. Wagging the dog, presidential triangulation to deflect. I had a cousin one time. I still have a cousin. His name is Rashawn and Lavelle. And Mama had given us a good whooping on this day. Boy, I can remember the dates of whoopings. And after I got whooped and Jonathan got whooped and Yusef got whooped, and boy, she put it on Lavelle. I mean, she put a whooping on him. And after Rashawn saw everyone's whooping, she was just about to turn her attention to him. And LaShawn said, Aunt Jackie, wait just a minute. Wait a minute, Aunt Jackie, wait a minute. And she said, what is it, Rashawn? He said, Mama, Aunt Jackie, I got something in my eye. My eye hurt. Can you look at this thing in my eye? My eye hurt. Mama said, when I get finished whipping you, all of the tears are going to wash that little dust out your eyes. Rashawn was trying to deflect from the issue at hand. Atiba, the president of the United States, is embroiled in a major controversy regarding the Epstein files, and he's turning now to Obama and Hillary Clinton. Your thoughts?
Well, before I answer the not so serious question, I'm going to triangulate and ask, was it a switch or was it a belt? Did you guess?
It was the belt. I mean, the one with the little holes for the latch on it.
You know, on the other hand, you know, what your story brought back some memories of my brother Damani when we were gonna get a beating, he would yell before the belt was in the air, and you would think that he was dying. And that's what I think is what you see happening right now with this president. This president lies, screams, hollers. It reminds me back, goes back to the hearings, and I can't remember Kavanaugh hearings, when we heard the senator from South Carolina, Senator Lindsey Graham. He looked like he was going to cry.
Yeah.
You know, at one point when he was defending Kavanaugh. So, you know, you talk about, and you mentioned this as triangulation. I keep looking at this like the story from the Bible, from the story from Scripture of Pharaoh and Pharaoh's magicians, sorcerers. You know, and we think about it from magic, but the magic is the distraction. And that's what we see happening today. We see, I've been doing this since 2016 and continue to look at the president as Pharaoh, and that we're living in very scripture, the time of Scripture, the time of religion. And all these things that we've been learning about in Scripture is all playing out right now. We just have to know how to put it together, how not to look at it so much from a literal meaning, but from a figurative meaning. So these distractions and the magic or what have you that's going on, whenever he says something, I honestly say to myself, think the opposite. And that's what you know. So if he's saying or trying to cast in a thing saying that the former president did something, you might want to start looking and wondering, what did he actually do?
You know, I was talking with some friends of mine in the Middle Eastern community, some of my Jewish friends, whom I've always maintained the security of Israel is particularly important to all of us as Americans, but also a homeland for the Palestinians. And there's a triangulation taking place there. There's a triangulation taking place in that the distraction is that we're no longer talking about peace and a two-state solution. We are responding to what happened on October 7th, understandably, one of the great tragedies of the modern 21st century. But at the same time, the deflection is, however tragic that was, there's another tragedy, the loss of innocent life, women, children, humanitarian aid, and hunger and starvation in the Gaza. That's the same thing, isn't it?
I think overall, and I agree with you, Jesse, I think overall too, we're not looking at the human aspect of this. And the human aspect of this is that right now, 100 years ago, there were very much many of the same things that were going on, just different conflicts going on all over the world. And America was pulled into World War I. Right now, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, this is the beginning of World War III, when I actually think that it's already been going on. And I say that when I look at not just Israel and Palestine, Ethiopia, Eritrea, India, and Pakistan, but we're not paying attention much to Russia and Ukraine. And when you look at what's going on in Russia and where the president talked about, oh, well, this was President Obama's attempt to steal an election, it really keeps getting me back to what was going on in 2016, where a lot of people thought that election was stolen, but there was not as much talk, you know, that went over. There were some people who asked for recounts. With Hillary, she lost states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio by razor thin margins. But look at what happened in 2020 when the president lost Georgia, and when he made phone calls asking the attorney general to find some votes.
11,800 of them, if I remember correctly.
So I think a lot of what we need to see is right there out in plain view. The problem is that we keep getting distracted, so we don't focus enough or long enough. We have a short-term attention span, but everything that we need is right there for us to look at. So the triangulation, we tend to crane our necks to look at the car wreck, and we have to stop looking at the car wreck and keep our eyes on the road.
You know, Atiba, you touch upon an interesting point. There was a president who had a sign on his desk that said, "The buck stops here." In other words, that president in that era was saying that I own the behavior of this country. I own the behavior of this government, both domestically and internationally, and I assume the responsibility for everything that is happening right. And I also assume the responsibility for things that aren't going so well. But when we have an administration and or a leader who fails to accept responsibility for healthcare, for the least of these, or for housing, or for education, or for the state of current affairs, who owns no behavior for nothing, I think that the spirit energy of the entire nation is profoundly impacted, whether it's at the presidential level, the mayoral level, the gubernatorial level, or any elected official who simply is unwilling to own the behavior and allow the buck to stop with them, since we, the people, have elected them to represent us.
Yeah, and and a lot of it is that we're not thinking so much as we're reacting because everything is coming at us so fast. But I kind of want to go back to something. First off, I enjoy being on your show.
I'm honored.
And I look forward to coming on. And in the 2 weeks in between, every 2 weeks, I'm constantly like listening to the show and I'm putting down my own notes. And one of the things that I thought about is, for one, we don't talk enough about numbers, data. So if we just look at Republican and Democrat presidents over the last 25 years, and I'm going to even take it back a little bit further to 1980. So if you're looking at the last 45 years, under President Reagan, there were 16 million jobs added. Under President Bush, the first, it was 2.6 million. Under President Bush II, there was a net loss of 20,000 jobs from the time he came in to the time he left. Under President Trump in his first term, minus 2,700,000. That's a combined net of 15,880,000. And that basically Reagan's carrying that. If you go to Democrats, back to Clinton, 22 million jobs, Obama, 11.3 million jobs, Biden, 16.6 million jobs, which is a combined net of almost 50 million, 49,900,000. We've got to go back, I think, and really start looking at and asking our elected officials who are saying that they're for us to just tell the truth and just give us these numbers. And it's up to us also for us to go back and look. Now, in terms of, some people will say, well, within the Black community, there weren't jobs, there weren't this. Well, we've also got to start asking the question, what is it that we need to do in order to create those jobs? And so there's a whole lot of other conversations or whatever, I think, that go along with this. But when you talk about triangulation and you look at what's going on, a lot of the reason why we get distracted is because we don't have the facts.
So I think when you raise this question about, and you made a clear line of distinction between what happened under Republican presidents and what happened under Democratic presidents, one could also argue that that line follows Keynesian economics. That is, Democrats have historically believed that the federal government and the government itself should intervene in the economy in order to create growth and expand employment opportunities, create job security, and move the nation forward. And something very different happens as Republicans around 1935, as Democrats around 1935 begin, particularly conservative Democrats, begin to move to the Republican Party, and they adopt this concept of fiscal conservatism. That is Keynesian economics, fiscal conservatism. The fiscal conservatives argue that the federal government and that the government itself should have less to do in the marketplace than we have historically seen. As a result, you don't get the kind of job growth without government investment of the American people in infrastructure, in new technologies, in new directions. And therefore, beyond the party labels, the Keynesians in this environment are losing and the fiscal conservatives are actually winning. And it's going to be a painful haul.
Well, I would say, where are they winning?
Yeah.
Because you can't define the economy. Well, I won't say you can't, because it is being defined. The economy is constantly being defined by how strong the Wall Street is, not how weak Main Street is. So we've got to take control of the narrative.
I agree.
And we keep allowing the narrative to go one way, and where they win is that we start repeating their talking points instead of creating our own and elevating that and creating our own echo chamber.
That's one of the things, and one of the reasons I think you're one of our most enlightened guests, because you sharpened my metal on this. Some of us are living on the side streets. We're not on Wall Street, we're not on Main Street, but we're on the side streets. And we are gullible to bell whistles from Democrats and Republicans that tell us the real problems are not on Wall Street. Less of our problems are on Main Street. The reality is the problems are on all of our side streets and in our front yards. And yet, many of us at the same time are saying we don't see the government working in our neighborhoods. We don't see it working in our streets. Help me with that, Atiba.
Listen, when I was a kid, I remember going in Washington, D.C., if you went into a corner store, guess who owned most of the corner stores? Someone from the Asian community, because they recognized that there was a demand. So we were going in there buying the 25-cent cookies, 50-cent cookies, or what have you. And that was they were going somewhere like a Costco, whatever that was then, to buy these things in bulk and come in and sell it. And none of the stuff was healthy, but it was cheap. But they were identifying a need. Same thing has happened with liquor stores within our communities. So when people say, oh, well, there's the jobs, people create jobs, people create demand, people provide whatever that demand is. And so I think that we have to get out of our way in terms of continuing to talk about what isn't there and start looking at, why do people from other countries come here and identify a need, and then they meet that need and they make money? Because those folks who had those stores weren't living in our communities. They were taking their money and doing what? Taking it out of the community.
So this is the point that Carter G. Woodson makes in The Miseducation of the Negro about Koreans coming to the United States and setting up cleaning, clothing cleaning facilities and dry cleaning facilities, laundry mats. But African Americans find themselves not in a entrepreneurial spirit, or even having necessarily at that time the education necessarily to benefit from the demand within our own communities. If I had to push back a little bit, I would, especially in Washington, D.C., where you live, what happens when the federal government, through DOGE, fires thousands, tens of thousands,
hundreds of
thousands of federal workers who are largely us, who live in Washington, D.C. and the surrounding collar counties and communities in Virginia and Maryland, are without something as basic as a job, let alone an entrepreneurial spirit?
300,000 jobs lost. I have my own company. One of the accounts, one of the projects that I was working on was with the Department of Labor, and I lost that contract because of what's going on in DC. All of us are affected. The problem right now is I think the Democrats aren't talking enough about how this is going to impact the whole country, because people were paying attention more so to what's going on in DC. All of this is a ripple effect, and the tsunami is coming.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. In this hour, my very special guest is Atiba Madian, and this is KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, more with Atiba.
my time worrying about me. Stop in the middle of my day to hear my voice and give you praise. Thank you for every breath I take. Stop and praise. Pray and wait patiently. You give me everything that I need. All I gotta do every day is stop and praise. Sometimes I'm so faithless, walking by my side, busy trying to make sure everything goes right. So wrapped up in how I feel, I haven't sought your will. But it's time for me to stop and tell you how I feel. Stop in the middle of my day. I've got to hear my voice and give you praise. Thank you for every breath I take. Stop and praise. Pray and wait patiently. You give me everything that I need. All I gotta do every day is stop and praise.
This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
Break out the champagne. Everybody get a glass.
Tavis Smiley is now ranked number 16 nationally and the highest rated talk show hosted by an African American on the 2025 Talkers Heavy 100 list of the most important talk radio hosts in the nation. Last year, Tavis ranked number 33 and the year before, number 45. The Tavis Smiley Show has rapidly expanded its national syndication to now include nearly 50 radio stations across the country and counting. Congratulations, Tavis.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black. Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the show. In this hour, our special guest is Atiba Madian. Atiba is a former Deputy Executive Director for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators. He's a strategic alliance consultant and president of Party Politics US. Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hey, Jesse, it's great to be here.
Atiba, just before the break, I certainly got the impression that this idea of self-help, which is not new in our history either, that there's this sense, and I've heard it many, many times since Donald Trump's reelection, that there is more we should be doing in our own communities to survive. And I certainly heard you hint at that. Help me here, Atiba.
Well, before we came on, Jesse, I was telling you about a book that I'm reading, First Class by Allison Stewart, which is about the high school that I graduated from, Dunbar High School. And Dunbar was always known as putting out the best of the best. And it was the first high school after slavery for African Americans. And there's a story that in the beginning where Allison's telling the story of a woman who said, I have all these children, but I only got this one that we need to like be able to go to send to school. There used to be a time when that was the case for the African American family, where because we needed to be working on the farms, we needed to be helping the family, but just send one, because that one then had the responsibility of coming back to help pull up the rest. We live in a very world, and we've lost touch with we. And I go back to President Reagan and his presidency, and I mentioned 16 million jobs. But during that administration, we were moving away from the whole. There was a whole whole family thing. It was when we started seeing less families where one person could work outside their home, and we needed two. So when we started seeing the crack epidemic, and it was breaking apart our families. We saw so many things happen in the 80s that I think that from a civic standpoint, we should go back and look at. But regardless of that, there are things that were going on 100 years ago where there was a certain sense of pride and excellence. And this book is called First Class. And I may upset some people by saying this, but the reality is we're no longer first class. We are accepting mediocrity in so many ways that it's also in our minds and our hearts, and it's affecting our soul. And so that makes it difficult for us to try to get out of the way and get out of the problems that are going on, because instead of looking at ourselves and saying, how can we do something? We want to blame somebody else. And that's the trickle down effect. I'm using the words of Reagan, trickle down. The trickle down is what happens at the top will trickle down to the masses. And the trickle down right now is that we see a crybaby. We see someone who throws these temper tantrums and points the fingers, as you said, in triangulation to everyone else except for themselves. The buck does no longer stops at that Oval Office desk, at that Resolute desk. And so it's not going to change if we keep waiting for someone up top. It's not going to change if we keep waiting for an Obama. It's only going to change when we accept the responsibility and start looking at each other and saying, we can be better. We talked about under Obama, we kept hearing change we can believe in. The change has to come within us. Our condition and our situation will not change first until we change what's in our hearts. And there's so much hate and even self-hate that we've got to really figure out how we pull that apart, how we take that apart, and we start looking at the country, not just my Black community, not just my Hispanic or Latino community, but my American community, my human community, in order to change the condition. And what we really should be looking at is how we changing the human condition from where we are right now.
I agree with that. I don't think I've heard it stated better. In fact, trickle-down economics, I argued in the 80s, did not work because our communities were not the beneficiaries of trickle-down economics. But I just think I heard you say something about trickle-up values. And the first person I ever saw with a tongue hanging out their mouth was not Michael Jordan. It was my grandma Tibby with a switch. And I mean, she was coming for you when you did wrong. And she had her tongue hanging out her mouth. In fact, we didn't even know how old Grandma Tibby was. She was our great grandmother. She was my father's mother's mother. Grandma Matilda Burns is buried in Greenville, South Carolina, next to Grandma Helen and Grandpa Charles Henry, and along with my father's biological father, Noah Robinson, right next door to them. And I find it interesting, however, that your point about trickle up values is something where the buck may not stop at the White House, but it certainly stops at my mama's door. To this day, Tavis Smiley once asked me, he said, we were on a commercial break when I was in Los Angeles, and he said, Jesse, what does your mother call you? And I said, Tavis, my mother calls me Munhum. She calls me that every day. And Tavis almost fell out of his seat because my mother controlled the system of values in our household, and that did matter. She didn't care who the president was. There was going to be order. It was going to reflect up. And these values largely reflected her Christian values and her own upbringing and rearing, and also some things that she experienced in her life that she did not want us to experience. And so she beat us for something called the old and the new. I'm going to beat you for something you did 3 weeks ago, and I'm going to beat you for something because I see a pattern that I think you're about to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, my siblings and I, we used to use family events to talk about my father and when he would beat us. And my father would say something like, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. And of course you're thinking like, ain't no way it's going to hurt you more than me. As you get to become an adult, you start understanding that. And whenever I'm hearing you say my bio and my background and having worked at the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, one of the most amazing and beautiful things that to have elected officials tell your parents is you did really well with him. He's so respectful. Yeah. He tells us things that, gets us into meetings, gets us here, but he says it in such a respectful way, but it's still, he's telling us we need to be here. We need to, and that happens in the home. I think also, we think about, for instance, the word woman and man. And there's so much now where people are talking about being non-binary. You get in trouble for politically incorrect but I think we really have to go back to really thinking about what the meanings of these words. To me, I was taught that woman is representative of the womb of the mind. And man, not to say just the man, but man in terms of the context represents mind. The woman is cultivating. The woman is nurturing. The woman is helping to develop the mind. And it's then, when we look at the context of how they keep trying to break down these different things and talking about gender roles, it shouldn't be so much about us breaking about gender roles as much as we're looking at how are we being responsible citizens. So when you're born, whether you're a girl or a boy, and you develop in a woman for 9 months, you come out and now you're in the womb of the family. And if something is not nurtured or not correct in either one of those two stages, when you get into the womb of the community, it can be dysfunctional. And so I think that when we look at what's going on within our society, there's so many things that keep trying to tear away at making sure that instead of empowering and protecting, it's really destroying the womb context so that the mind is distracted and doesn't know what to represent and what to look at because it wasn't beat, and not necessarily beat always from a belt, but beat in terms of discipline to be able to understand how to be a productive citizen.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is KBLA Talk 1580. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, more with Atiba Mannion.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is the story of the one. As a lineman, he does whatever it takes to keep the power on in his community. And he wants a partner like Grainger who does the same. Grainger offers the professional-grade products he needs, from voltage detectors to harnesses to hard hats, plus fast, dependable delivery, so he can rise to every challenge. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Some things can steal your sunshine.
Ugh, I just got my hair done.
Sorry, the cooler's broken. Anyone see my flip-flops? Anyone?
But COVID-19 can steal a lot more.
I just took a COVID test. Ugh.
Prescription medications for COVID exist. If you test positive this summer, ask your doctor if they're right for you. Visit PfizerForAll.com/COVID-19 to learn more. Sponsored by Pfizer.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds. Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Are you wet shaving? You'll get razor bumps.
Nah, Pops, I'm good with Gillette Skin Guard. How long you been growing that beard Mama hates anyway?
Since 77. I shaved and got ingrown so bad.
That's why I use the Gillette Skin Guard razor, face scrub, shave gel, and moisturizer. So I don't have to worry about new razor bumps or shaving irritation.
Gillette Skin Guard, huh? Your mama's gonna love this one.
The best a man can get keeps getting better with Gillette Skin Guard. Buy now at a retailer near you.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. My very special guest this hour is Atiba Madian. Atiba is a former Deputy Executive Director for the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, Strategic Alliance Consultant, and President of Party Politics US. He worked as a TV political contributor for BNC News, The Heat, In the Know with Mo, The Leslie Marshall Show, iHeartRadio, GovExec at 96.3 WHUR, and the One America News Network. He is an author, having released in 2020 his first novel, Saving Grace, a Political Thriller. Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Always good to be here. Let's go.
So let me throw this out at you. There's no doubt in the African American community, fatherlessness is an epidemic. We've talked about it all of our lives. In a real sense, however, we do project fatherhood on the Bill Cosbys of life during that era where the Cosby Show and the late Malcolm Jamal Warner is being celebrated as our brother that we lost recently in Costa Rica, because we grew up with him. He grew up with us. He was the cousin, the brother that we've always wanted. With the sisters that he had, we were part of that family. But in a real sense, Atiba, the first Black president of the United States, is also, now this is going to be hard for some people to accept, he's also a spiritual father to Black people in an era when fatherlessness left us in a position where we longed for a desire and we had a national example. And recently, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, posted an AI video of the arrest of Barack Obama in the White House over nonsense tied to Barack Obama in 2016, the Russian hoax. That really, really goes at the heart, in my opinion, of the expectations of how we see ourselves, and it's kind of an abomination, if you will, on behalf of the Trump administration, in my opinion. Your thoughts?
Remember in 2016, we kept hearing chants of lock her up?
Yes.
They control the narrative. They create an echo chamber. Where's ours? Because that's what he's doing. And I said in the last segment, trickle down. So what he says, these people have issues in their tissues. When you think about slavery and its impact on us, you also have to look at its impact on them. And many of them were always told, if you work hard, if you do this, you too can have what we have. Oh, but wait, you can't, but you can't have their jobs because they work for free. So then they created that's when they were pitting us against them. It's the same thing right now with immigration. So when we're looking at what is happening in Washington and what's being said and what the media continues to report, the media will report what they hear, what they think is going to get us to watch. And what gets us to watch is the drama. That's why I watched, and that's why many people watch the movie Wag the Dog.
Mm.
You know, so it's the drama, and we are a victim of the drama. We're looking for the car wreck. I mean, you think about, there can be a car wreck on one side of the road and the traffic can be backed up on the other, not because there's an accident on the other, because everybody wants to know what happened.
Mm.
So what we want to do, or can be doing, is we can change the narrative.
Okay.
You know, I'm wearing a shirt right now that says midterms effing matters. I've been wearing these shirts since 2018 because voting matters. Congressman John Lewis taught me, he put into me the importance of voting. And how many of us do we hear every election cycle, I'm not going to vote because nobody's on the ballot that excites me. I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count. And that's been the trickle down. That's what people have been telling us. So we've got to figure out how we re-educate ourselves and retrain ourselves to stop accepting to find that we come to a house and there's not a back door, so we cut it there for ourselves because we keep carrying other people's water.
Mm.
We keep cutting the door for ourselves and we keep walking in the back door when the President Obama showed us we can walk through the front door. We can walk through the front door of the president's house. We can be the president. But the problem is we also didn't control the narrative after he became president, and we lost the hope. And that was their goal. When Mitch McConnell said our number one responsibility right now is to make sure that this president is not reelected. What he was saying is that our number one issue, translation, is that we don't give them any more hope. So then it became fear.
Well, that's part of what happened, right? But I was, very close to Tavis Smiley and Cornel West and others who were encouraging Barack Obama to speak to the legitimate interests and needs of African Americans as the first Black president. And the president decided, even in his final term with nothing to lose, that he wanted to be this person for everybody. I get it. But Donald Trump is showing us that you can deliver for your base. You can deliver for your base in 6 months.
Yeah,
the first 6 months of a second term. And we've never seen that from a Democrat before. It's going to be impossible, in my opinion, given our expectations right now, that we can elect somebody in light of this who doesn't offer us the antithesis and promise us a 6 months of progress in our direction that we've seen against us in the last 6 months and likely in the next 4 years.
I agree with you 100% that we didn't see it. And I applaud and happy that you and Tavis were talking to President Obama about that. But I'm going to go a step further and say it has to be the people that forces the president to say those things. See, that's where this MAGA Tea Party thing, people act as if MAGA is new. MAGA is an outgrowth of the Tea Party. The Tea Party is something else. When we want to keep going back historically. But we, the people, have to create the echo chamber. We, the people, have to stop looking for someone else to do what we can do. And I'm saying this from this standpoint. President Obama won in 2008, and it was a resounding victory. So resounding that John McCain came out early and said, hey, we lost. 2010, people didn't come back and vote in the midterms. 2012, Obama wins, was a bit closer against Mitt Romney. 2014, he lost more seats. Why? Because people didn't come out and vote in the midterms. So the thing is that we were there and people kept looking for the president to speak to our issues when it was up to us to force him. And I'll say this, Franklin Roosevelt becomes president, group of labor people come in to talk to him, say this and this and this and this. We want you to do this and this. President Roosevelt looks at them and says, hey, I like it, but now go out there and make me do it. What did that mean? Because you got to get the popularity of the people to force him to be able to do that. The president can do but so much. You were in the Congress. You could do but so much. It has to be the will of the people. I think that really is the foundation of what this country and why it has been a beacon of light for the world, because it starts off with 3 words: we the people, not I, we the people. And I think that we've got to figure out how we go back to that and looking at that from an American standpoint.
One of the, and I'm going to give you an opportunity for a word of hope. One of the great challenges and the reality of the Obama administration was this. He did challenge from the White House his own friends. He did create an environment where it was difficult to speak with him and share things from the base. That I believe to be true, but I know we'll cover this again in future episodes. Atiba, a word of hope. We have about 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Well, I think hope for me is, every American family, regardless of ethnicity, finding ways to look for leadership that not only talks about making their lives better, but talks about and delivers in terms of how to put more money in their pockets.
That's right.
And, I think that really has to be the overarching message, because of hope. The real hope is about being hopeful that our next generation is going to do better than we did. And right now we're on a pathway where the next generations are not on a pathway to do better. So my hope is that we find that we stop looking just in terms of political parties or just in terms of ethnicity, but we look at the country as a whole, and we start looking at how are we going to build relationships that go outside of our comfort zone and bring more people to a collective table, like the one that Dr. King envisioned, that Dr. King spoke about in his dream, and that we make that dream the reality, and that we recognize that we are the hope that we want. We are the hope that we believe in. We are the hope that we deserve. But we have to find that hope. We have to find that also within us and not just keep looking for someone else to give it to us.
My dad said, stop complaining about what you don't have. Start using what you got. Atiba Madian has been our very special guest in this hour. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. Black Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is cracking down on smoking on trains and buses.
We finally get people to get back on our public transportation system, and then they can't have a pleasant ride because someone wants to smoke. It's unconscionable. It's unthinkable. And I've had enough of this.
Johnson plans on an anti-smoking public awareness campaign, and he wants to put social workers at CTA stops. A former defense attorney connected to Young Thug's Regal trial is being accused of smuggling contraband into the Fulton County Jail. Nicole Fagan was initially charged in February with gang activity and evidence tampering. Monday, 3 additional counts were added. The 34-year-old's prior charges include trafficking meth and multiple counts of providing inmates with prohibited items. Finally, Drake is teasing music fans with his new album, Iceman. No word on a release date. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and more for a child in poverty. And there are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393. Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and more for a child in poverty. And there are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Chargers moved their training camp this week to San Diego for 3 days. The team is reconnecting with the fan base they left behind when they moved to LA in 2017. The Chargers are working out at the University of San Diego, where Coach Jim Harbaugh started his coaching career in 2004. Wednesday morning, the Chargers did a walkthrough practice aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, a Navy aircraft carrier that would stretch over 3 football fields. The Chargers returned to their El Segundo facility on Thursday. When the LA Sparks beat the Washington Mystics Tuesday in D.C., they won 3 in a row for the first time this season. The 9-14 Sparks are at the Connecticut Sun Thursday night. Former Duke All-American Nolan Smith is the new men's basketball coach at HBCU Tennessee State. Smith replaces Brian Collins, who left to become an assistant coach with the NBA Memphis Grizzlies. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time. Whenever news breaks, while we're on the air, it's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580. And we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. And I thank you, thank you.
Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Atiba Madian has me thinking. And I keep hearing from a lot of people that self-help in the Trump era, by the way, self-help is an African-American economic program where we do more for ourselves with less reliance upon the government, outside forces, outside community. I think Dr. King might argue that there is an interconnectedness to our reality. We like certain gym shoes, but they are made in China. We like certain shirts, but they're made in foreign lands. So much of our textiles are made overseas. So much of our cotton is no longer grown in the United States, but in other parts of the world. Don't nobody want to pick no more cotton. There's an interconnectedness here that some of us like certain kinds of glasses and shades. They usually come from Italy or France. We like the way they fit on our heads, the way they wrap around our eyes. We like the frames. We spend lots of times in stores. And so there is an interconnectedness to even this idea of self-help. And Dr. King argued that we rely every day in so many ways upon every single person on the planet. I want to talk about some of that in this hour with our very special contributor, Dr. S. Todd Urey, who is the principal of the Urey Firm, a Maryland-based litigation and government relations firm, and also serves as the senior pastor of the Douglas Memorial Community Church in Baltimore and affiliates. Dr. Urey is also former chief executive officer of the Rainbow Push Coalition, an international organization founded by my father. Dr. Urey's social justice work includes having served on national boards from the National Action Network, past action chair of the Maryland State Conference of the NAACP, Churches for Community Development, and just on and on and on. Dr. Urey, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
And good to be with you as always on Wednesday. I'm hanging out at the Progressive National Baptist Convention, and so they are convening and chatting all around us, but always good to be with you to see what we're going to talk about today.
Dr. Urey, I want to address this issue of triangulation and what the president did when he posted Barack Obama being arrested in the White House using an AI video. But before we get to that, let's hang around this idea of self-help for a minute. Atiba Madian's got me thinking. What else can we be doing for ourselves that in this economic environment where it's not just self-reliance, I mean, we're not just living on a plantation, borrowing from the next shotgun house some cornmeal, but so much of this world is interconnected that, yes, I can love my brother next door, but so much of us are a part of so much of everything that's going on in the world. Tariffs are affecting the Black community, whether we want to isolate ourselves into a little corner or not. That's just a fact.
Yeah, there's when we consider the context of what self-help means, it's agents, right? Being able to make legitimate decisions that affect your core concerns because you have recognized authentic power, legitimate power. It is this important discussion that says there are always things that we can do, but we also have to put it in a historical context. This notion that we should be somehow more self-reliant, I think defies what we know to be the history of our people. The truth of the matter is that every government aid program that has ever been devised benefited other communities more than it did ours, right? And so while it spoke to some of the need, we didn't get the proportional value of the impact. And so even when we think about tax cuts, or if we think about who do these tariffs actually benefit? Those who are actually in production. When we were in production, they stressed us out of production, right? Because the competitive nature of our ability to be actually relevant in the space has always been prominent and prevalent. And so when we start this conversation about agency, let me give you just a contrast because they come up at about the same time. The Emancipation Proclamation goes in January 1, 1863. Before the Emancipation Proclamation took effect, the Homestead Act was actually implemented. And so even while we're trying to get to what was going to be an executive order of 48% a mule, the program for 160 acres for others to benefit was already well underway. And so when we talk about agency, we cannot just say that somehow or other we're looking for the government to do for us as opposed to with us. We got to look at the real history and talk about this wealth gap that exists because the government has leaned in, and this administration is probably case study number one of what happens when self-interest finds government aid in real time.
I believe they're going to give the South Africans that are coming to the United States land. I think they're going to give them homes. They're already giving them benefits, and they're not even American citizens. The very complaints that they're making against our brown brothers and sisters, whom they argue have come here illegally, and some have, and some are criminal and very dangerous people, but not the vast majority of them. They're escaping certain kinds of economic conditions, no different than the Europeans escaped when they came to the United States, when they migrated to the United States. You really can't just cross the border. You got to cross an ocean. So there is a process to get here from that perspective. But the reality at least settles with me that when it comes to brown people and people of color coming to the United States, this question of agency remains. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. And in this hour, Dr. S. Todd Urey.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we're proud to be celebrating 4 years on the air, but we know we could not have made it this far without you. We work hard every single day to curate conversations that will enlighten, encourage, and empower you. So, from all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, a big thank you for your love and support.
You don't know how much you mean to me.
And by the way, if your smartphone did not update automatically, be sure to download our brand new KBLA 1580 app. We think you'll love all the new features, including new ways to send us photos and video in real time. Whenever news breaks, while we're on the air, it's a new dawn, a new day for KBLA Talk 1580. And we're glad you're on this journey with us.
You never turned away, you were right there. Thank you, thank you.
Whoa, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One NA, member FDIC.
Our daughter Jessie loves playing detective.
A clue.
But since we discovered she has sensitive skin, we've been playing detective too.
We thought the problem was our puppy.
But it was actually our old detergent.
Aha.
So we switched to Tide Free and Gentle. Tide Free and Gentle provides an excellent Tide clean, and it doesn't leave behind irritating residues like dyes or perfumes, so it's gentle on your skin.
Case closed.
If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Free and Gentle.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Jr. Looking forward to Jesse Jackson Jr. on the politics of our faith with Reverend Dr. S. Todd Yeary, Esquire. He has 1 foot in the pulpit pit and 1 foot in the courtroom. He is both a practicing pastor and a practicing lawyer. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Just out in these streets practicing. What can I tell you? You know.
Before the break, Dr. Yeary raised the question of agency. When someone has agency, it means they have the capacity to make choices and act in a way that influences their own life and potentially the world around them. It involves a sense of control, the ability to set goals, and the confidence to take action towards achieving them. Essentially, it's about feeling like an active agent in one's own life rather than a passive recipient of others' events. In slavery, we had no agency, nowhere to go, no neighbors other than the ones that are around us, our children taken from us, limited options for relationships, and the way in which those relationships manifested themselves included human degradation and, more often than not, lots of violations. With that said, Dr. Yeary, are we too free? Are we so free that we can't even see ourselves and help ourselves?
The question is, are we free? Period. Right? Mm-hmm. Are we just less property, less chattel than we were before? And so the question of agency, when we consider how it plays out in a number of venues, if we look at how the courts function, if we look at how the courts respond, that's, I think, something that you would have personal recognition of, having been able to see the system from a perspective that most people don't. And so when we consider how even the distinctions that we know of at a personal level, I don't know that it is a matter of being too free. It's, have we become too satisfied with being not yet free, but just not so much property as we used to be?
Okay, I need you to work with me on that, because yes, I've seen both sides of what it means to have agency. That is my complete freedom. I now know in more ways than I could have ever conceived what it means to experience confinement, to lose agency. And yet in the post-incarceration environment, there are 70 million of us, which includes me, whereas felons, we consider ourselves unfree, that we know more years in unfreedom than we even know in incarceration. Work with me here, Dr. Yeary.
Well, the very nature of what it means to have been incarcerated means that per the 13th Amendment, you have actually been enslaved. That's the definition of the 13th Amendment, that slavery shall be illegal except in instances of punishment for crime. And so, upon conviction, whether it's by jury or by plea, which is a whole different conversation, because many times the plea system is stacked against the interest of already vulnerable communities. Sometimes taking a plea where it may not have carcerable time, it still leaves a permanent stain. And so when your classification changes, your ability to move changes, your
Mm.
agency changes, your options change. And not because of anything that was negotiated by you, it was imposed on you. And because we don't yet have a framework of what we would call justice that deals with redemption as a core principle, we now have a lot of scarlet letter like realities where folks don't necessarily have to cry like the leper does in scripture, unclean, unclean, but
Mm.
the effect is still the same. You've done your time, you've paid your debt, and yet you still have this remarkable stain that just does not go away. And so you're constantly reminded of your previous state of servitude to the system that has now said you're a slave, but there is no Freedmen's Bureau going to be established
Mm.
for the 70 million of those who are in similar circumstance. And if there were, you would probably see the same kind of attack and assault on that system as we saw on the Freedmen's Bureau itself, which we talked about last week.
I think about, agency for those who are able to leave the community and move into Manhattan or into downtown Chicago or into Beverly Hills or into the bulkhead areas of Atlanta. But the vast majority of African Americans, even those who have never offended, know a handful of zip codes in their cities. We're all there, most of whom are not offenders, but they know no agency beyond their neighborhood. When I remember growing up, one of my dear mothers, if you will, Florine Malone, was from Markham, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
And Mrs. Malone used to come from Markham, Illinois every day when my parents weren't available, not only to provide for my brothers and sisters, and obviously she took care of some basic chores around our home. We decided one day when Mrs. Malone was 66 years old to take her to downtown Chicago. Mrs. Malone said when she got there, she thought she was in Wisconsin because her reality was never from 68th and Constance North to downtown Chicago. It was from Markham, Illinois to 68th Street and back for 66 years. That's the only reality that she knew. She hadn't been anywhere. And the vast majority of our people never live or move 5 miles past their home. That's hard to imagine in a transient society. But Black people today, wherever they are, still find themselves in grossly segregated communities. In fact, most congressional districts, consistent with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, these districts are easy to draw by and large because African Americans are essentially concentrated in certain sides of town in every community in the United States. That's a different kind of agency, isn't it? Or lack thereof?
Well, the latter, right? Here's the reality. And I think you look at how urban and municipal policy is done, how we make it hard for folks to be able to have freedom of movement beyond certain constraints, how bus routes are intentionally designed to go through some neighborhoods and around others, how the stops are spaced intentionally. When we consider that a carryover from the plantation reality was that you had to make sure that you were in certain places at certain times with permission. And if you were not there, you had to have a pass. You actually had to have a document, kind of like a visa, that said that you were authorized to be in a place where otherwise you should not be. And so we've learned what it's like to have your papers. And even if you had papers, they could just deport you. And many times that deportation would be by way of a transaction where you were physically sold to another plantation owner somewhere else because you had violated immigration policy. And so what we see is variations when we talk about this issue about place and presence and person. These are all realities that are interlinked. And so this notion that somehow or other we are too free, we ain't free yet. If I take off my tie, as you can see, I'm dressed more like lawyer, right? I'm trying to make sure that I represent my mama's sacrifice and investment so that folks might be, more inclined to give deference to the fact that I might actually be an educated Negro. But but if I take this off and I happen to, even with it on, if I happen to walk in the wrong neighborhood at the right time, it doesn't matter what's on my resume. It matters whether or not I have a pass to be able to be in a place where society is not giving me sanction to be. And my agency be damned if I just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's the reality that we continue to face. And that's the one that we continue to for whatever reason, avoid having substantive conversations in our political discourse. That the notion of a happenstance election of a Black president does not in and of itself resolve and eradicate all of the harms and ongoing issues around race and racial exclusion. It's showing up in this administration's policies in real time. And when the biggest violation of immigration law is not folks who are trying to, quote, invade the country, it's visa overstays from countries like those where Customs and Border Patrol isn't really doing that much checking. And to your point about the South African guest who are about to get not only potentially land, but a pathway that is much different than what anybody else has to go through to citizenship, a shortcut, if you will. And so the arbitrariness that continues to exist around who can be a citizen and who can be a person is still one that plagues us. And we continue to see the lingering effects, the residue of that unresolved issue, not only in our politics, but in our day-to-day lived experience.
I also heard something else, Dr. Yuri, from Atiba Madian, where he spoke about our responsibility to regain excellence. I almost want to say in spite of or in light of, but that responsibility becomes immensely personal under any circumstances. And more specifically, he pointed to what I believe to be the economics of the Reagan era. He talked about trickle-down economics, which you and I know the supply-siders did not equal the demand-siders, and that was deeply troubling. We just did not benefit from the Reagan tax cuts in the way they were articulated. But it's hard for me to reconcile that in an era where we too have died, where we too have contributed to the very fabric of what it means to be an American, that when I see Jim Clyburn in committee hearing, I think most recently, arguing that to scrub Medgar Evers' name as a war hero from the website of the military, as if we've made no contribution or the contribution that we made is irrelevant. It suggests an even deeper crisis if regaining excellence in light of or in spite of can also be dismissed.
Yeah, there's a lot in that. And sometimes we have to pause and unpack who's controlling the narrative. So when I hear regaining excellence, it not that it was intended, but it sounds like there is an abandonment of a certain standard. That's not what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not so sure he was there, but I hear what you're saying in terms of just the structure of the language.
Yeah, I mean, so I would need some clarity on regaining excellence. I think in order to regain it, we have to do a better job of telling it, because there are all kinds of excellent stories of success and overcoming in our communities each and every day. But instead, what we get in terms of the format of profit-driven media is that when the news gets told, the first thing you got to do is you got to deal with 10 minutes of trauma. And then you got to feel your way through maybe some weather forecast that may or may not work. Then you got to get your sports in, and then you got to get your commercial time in. But in terms of telling the story, that's a hymn in our church tradition. I love to tell the story. It will be my theme and glory. We've got to be able to tell. The telling of our history is first oral, right? The oral tradition, the giving life through the speaking of the word. In the beginning was the word. Our words matter because somebody else is controlling the words. Even in the course of when we find our ways back into making sure we continue to contribute, right? Whether or not we've stuck to the script or we deviated from the script, who's telling the story? Because the story is, or the story or the narrative that gets lifted up, is that somehow or other there's something dysfunctional or defective that's coming out of our community. It is deeply embedded and therefore it is problematic, is a fiction. And the way you know it's a fiction is because all of some of the ways that we've told story when we've gotten them recorded or when we've used our creativity to be able to imagine a reality beyond the one that's confined. What do? They take them off the shelves. They take them out of libraries. Remember, we had to protest to get in the library. Now we got to protest to get our books back in the library. So either they don't want our presence and they don't want our genius at the same time. And so part of, I think, maybe the regaining of excellence is a regaining of a commitment and a passion that says we dare not be satisfied until we get free, because we not free. We are less in bondage, but not yet fully liberated. And there's much more work to do.
Dr. Uri, there's a lot going on in the courtrooms around America. Breonna Taylor, the Utah murders, Donald Trump, congressional action, the presidency. When we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Dr. S. Todd Uri is going to take us through the courtroom of America, and we're going to find out what's going on.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. Former President Barack Obama's office is pushing back on claims by President Donald Trump that Obama manufactured intelligence that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. The former President Barack Obama's spokesperson called the claims outrageous, bizarre, and a weak attempt at a distraction. The White House says the DOJ is now investigating.
We will be releasing these documents shortly in the wake of the release that we did last week. I'm very encouraged by the fact that we have whistleblowers coming forward.
This was a classic case of driving while black.
Attorney Ben Crump demanding answers from Florida cops after a college student who was punched and beat during a traffic stop by Jacksonville deputies went viral. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and more for a child in poverty. And there are thousands of kids who've been waiting over a year and their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Chargers moved their training camp this week to San Diego for 3 days. The team is reconnecting with the fan base they left behind when they moved to LA in 2017. The Chargers are working out at the University of San Diego, where Coach Jim Harbaugh started his coaching career in 2004. Wednesday morning, the Chargers did a walkthrough practice aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln, a Navy aircraft carrier that was stretched over 3 football fields. The Chargers returned to their El Segundo facility on Thursday. When the LA Sparks beat the Washington Mystics Tuesday in D.C., they won 3 in a row for the first time this season. The 9-14 Sparks are at the Connecticut Sun Thursday night. Former Duke All-American Nolan Smith is the new men's basketball coach at HBCU Tennessee State. Smith replaces Brian Collins, who left to become an assistant coach with the NBA Memphis Grizzlies. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey man, hey, what's up? What's that station you listening to? Oh man, you don't know? That's Talk Radio, KBLA 1580 AM. Check it out. 1580 KBLA AM. 1580 Talk Radio. Progressive.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we're celebrating our 4th anniversary. And this track right here is the gift one of our devoted listeners presented to us.
Where you get some information, get a true education to know. Ooh, yeah. 1580.
How cool is that? Having a member of our KBLA delegation write us a song. Stop it. Our listeners love us and there ain't nothing we can do about it. Wouldn't want to. Thanks to Cardell and everybody else for turning on KBLA Talk 1580. We love you right black.
KBLA 1580 Talk Radio. It's like me. Ooh, KBLA 1580 Talk Radio. Progressive. KBLA.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, also known as AD, a type of dementia that affects memory, thinking, and behavior, making everyday tasks challenging. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? There are things you can do to help reduce your risk for developing AD. Managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure is crucial. Staying physically active, maintaining social connections, eating a healthy diet, and keeping your mind engaged with activities like reading or puzzles can all contribute to brain health. It's also important to recognize some common signs and symptoms of early AD, such as forgetfulness that causes problems with everyday life, asking the same question a few times in a row, and difficulty concentrating on basic tasks. If you see these signs in yourself or a loved one, don't wait. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing AD effectively. To learn more about AD and a potential treatment option, visit treatalzearly.com. That's treatalzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour has 1 foot in the pulpit and 1 foot in the courtroom. Dr. Yuri, what's going on in the courtrooms of our country?
Well, drama, right? Every day is another day unto itself, kind of like as the world turns. But what we do know is this week there was a lot of concern leading up to the sentencing of former LMPD officer Brett Hankison, who is the officer who, on the night that the stale search warrant was served on Breonna Taylor's home, was standing outside the apartment and fired blindly through the patio glass door that was covered several times. And certainly it's believed not only was that reckless, though, he was acquitted on state charges. The Department of Justice under the prior administration pursued violations of civil rights claims against former officer Hankison, and he was convicted. And so the sentencing was supposed to be a while ago. It was delayed. And then the current DOJ under the current administration recommended that there would be a 1-day sentence imposed, and that day had already been served when he Mr. Hankerson was taken into custody, so he would have done no time. And so there was a lot of concern that this Justice Department was going to lean on the scale, and this trial judge, who was actually appointed by the current president in his last administration, might be somehow swayed to do what it is that her nominator had asked that the Justice Department do. She sentenced Mr. Hankinson to 33 months. So that's 2 years and 9 months of incarceration. Of course, not all of that is going to be active time. There'll be some formula, but not having the pre-sentence report and the investigation of his background, we don't know what the guideline range would have been. But certainly, I think there's a bit of a sigh of relief that it wasn't 1 day, but at the same time, there's still great concern that 33 months is not nearly enough for what it has cost, not only in the loss and the taking of Breonna Taylor's life, but the incurable pain that her mother, Tamika Palmer, still carries around with her every day.
Reverend Uri, they stuck their finger in the eye of every person who believes in justice. 1 day. Insulting. They meant to send a signal to us that these are the kinds of cases we are not going to enforce. Insulting. Ms. Palmer.
While you're there on the insult, remember now, they had already come with, they poked, this is the second poke in the eye. The first poke in the eye was when they went back to the federal court that was going to have oversight on the consent decree and said, we want to withdraw it. And the current administration in Louisville said, we agree, withdraw the consent decree that would be entered as an order that would now say that the reforms necessary at the Louisville Metro Police Department would not be enforced by a federal judge. It would be subject to kind of the goodwill, if you will, of certain people in city government. That's the problem that we have. Anytime there's been a need to have enforcement to be able to protect the rights and interests of people who have been exploited by the government always does what we think the government would never do. And then we find our issues not only profoundly exacerbated, but our dreams sometimes irretrievably shattered.
Counselor, the defense represents the defendant in these cases. In this case, the defendant was Hankerson. The prosecution represents the people. The prosecutors asked for a day. The people said what he did is only worthy of a day worth of time. Now, if that isn't placing your thumb on the hands of justice, meaning that the administration specifically instructed the prosecution, which Ms. Palmer said, or certainly suggests, that the prosecution from the very inception of the case was on the side of Hankerson.
Let's just be real clear. There is not a long track record of convictions of police officers for violating the constitutional rights of people. Let's just be very, very clear. Just like we saw in Minneapolis with the prosecution of the officer who killed George Floyd, there had only been one conviction of a police officer for violating the constitutional rights of a person in Minnesota ever. And so when Attorney General Keith Ellison took the case, and it was after your father actually flew up in the middle of COVID. We went up to meet with him, to have meet with the Attorney General, met Reverend there, met with community, had a conversation, appealed to the Attorney General that he ought to take an active role in making sure that this kind of travesty, not just tragedy, would be ever repeated. It required a different kind of persistence. And the truth of the matter is that the system is always skewed in the interest of those who you mentioned, the people. Well, the is a definite article. People is subjective, and I don't know. And based on what I've seen, I've got a number of civil rights cases actively in litigation right now across the country. The people is not the people. The people is some people. And depending on how close or far away you are from the definition of people, often has a feel about um, what your access to justice might actually look like. That's the dilemma that we continue to face in this country, and it's going to get worse before it gets better, because all you got to do is look at how the courts are changing before our very eyes. Federal enforcement of the protections of the interest of agency of our community are under outright attack, and this one's going to be unrelenting, and we're just 6 months in to this next fierce storm.
Speaking of outrageous, we have about 2 minutes before we come forward. I was watching and listening to the news here on KBLA, and I heard very specifically a viral video that I saw myself of a police officer punching a person in the face through his car window twice, maybe 3 times. I saw a black superintendent of police arguing on behalf of the officers that what we were seeing with our own eyes did not happen. The young man's demeanor was calm, non-threatening. He kept his hands visible. And the police officer punched through the car window and punched him in his face twice. Did you see the same viral video that I saw?
Well, not only have I seen it, I've got a case that's similar to it.
Mm.
Young brother coming out of a grocery store where he's working, going to his car, police eyeballing him. He already knows this is going to be a thing. They approach him. He says, whoever you're looking for is not me. They detain him. And while he's detained, leaned up against the car, his chest is up against the car. An officer comes up from behind him and hits him with a closed fist. And he's already surrendered. Let's just be real clear.
A sucker punch?
It's in federal court now.
Wow.
There are instances every single day where the dignity and personhood of certain people are violated on a whim. And officers that are often the violators, there is no punishment, and they continue to have police powers. There are other cases right now where we're looking at issues where a case where a school resource officer issues a ticket. It's something as simple. You're going to issue a ticket for theft for something that you know is not a theft, and then have the audacity for the officer to get on the stands. And when questioned, I question him, that when you issued this ticket, you had no proof or evidence that, and I'm going to mention her name because it's been public, that Amar Harris had not stolen anything. He said, nope, had no proof. Said the reason he issued the ticket is he was mad because her mother did not come talk to him to agree for him to put in some substitute discipline that was still unjustified. That's the dynamic that we're dealing with, whether it's a ticket, whether it's a punch, whether it's the taking of someone's life, whether it's a beat down on camera, whether it's a beat down that ain't on camera. That's the issue that we've got to confront, and that's the fight we have to keep up.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to KBLA Talk 1580 and the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. When we come forward, Reverend Todd Erie will be with us, and so will Atiba Madian joining us for our close.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580. The biggest names, the best conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Do Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis symptoms keep coming back? Tremfya, guselkumab, may help, with rapid remission achieved at 12 weeks and lasting clinical remission at 1 year. Some even saw visible improvement of their intestinal lining at 12 weeks and 1 year. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active Crohn's disease and adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections and liver problems may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Healing is possible with Tremfya. Approximately 3 out of 10 patients were in endoscopic remission at 1 year, based on areas visualized on colonoscopy, which may not represent the deeper bowel layer or entire GI tract. Individual results may vary. Ask your doctor about Tremfya today. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jesse Jackson Jr., welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We're on Wednesdays. The Politics of Our Faith with Reverend Dr. S. Todd Yeary is our special host. In this final segment, Atiba Madian, former Deputy Executive Director for the National Black Caucus of State Legislature, is joining us in this final segment to offer some clarity and to help close us out with Reverend Dr. Yeary. Atiba, welcome forward again. I think your mic might be muted. I still can't hear Atiba. Dr. Yeary, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We'll find out what the technical problem is with Atiba's microphone in just a moment. And
Yeah, because I want to hear what he got to say. Listen.
I do too. As we wait for Atiba to join us, and I'll get a signal from him momentarily. Atiba, can you hear us? He can hear us, but I think that he is still muted for some reason or another. I can't hear Atiba's microphone. Dr. Yeary, while we wait for Atiba, we were having a conversation about excellence and the scope of excellence in spite of and in light of. This issue was raised by Atiba. And I hope you'll come back just momentarily and share with us in this final segment of our show. Your thoughts, Dr. Yeary.
So the commitment to excellence, it's an important one. He raises an important question. The regaining it, is it regaining our awareness, regaining our claiming it, our regaining of pushing it? But I want to emphasize it's the excellence, and the excellence is not something that's missing. It's actually something that's not often enough lifted. And so there's a counter narrative that is often imposed on us because it's the dominant narrative in certain spaces that are viewed as credible, that somehow assigns dysfunction to the lived reality of certain groups of people. And so if you're from a certain place or you look a certain way, then obviously you have this stereotype that's attached to you, and therefore the expectations of you are going to be defective and deficient. They're not going to be tied to your genuine genius and the excellence of the creator that made you who you are.
Atiba, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I'm glad we worked that out. Atiba?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. say this because I want to be diplomatic, and at the same time, I want to be truthful. You know, in terms of excellence, I just think that we just keep accepting mediocrity. And I think that there's some things that we need to go back to and lean on. And then some of that is spiritual. Some of that is what we learned and what we were gathering in the church. There's just so many things that I see that I think that other people want to hear us talk about and not necessarily keep accepting. And in uplifting, part of that, I think, is that we have to tell our story. We have to tell our American story. Slavery is not a Black history. Martin Luther King is not Black history. Frederick Douglass is not Black history. All of this is American history. It's human. And we have to, we're too often, Reverend Yuri, when you're representing someone like you are, I know when I was working with the Black News Channel, we kept talking about humanizing. And yeah, it is humanizing, but we can't wait till something happens to humanize. We have to tell our stories. And I think Felicia Rashad said it so eloquently and so well in an interview a few years ago on the Today Show, where she said that she felt that the thing about the Cosby Show was that other families that didn't look like us got to see how much more in common that we had with them. That's why it's so important to tell our stories.
Dr. Yuri?
Well, yeah, Brother T was right? We cannot accept mediocrity. We also have to be very clear about in lifting up that excellence, that's not an appearance necessarily, that's an essence. And I'll give you a couple of contrasts. If we think about the sitcoms, and one that, I grew up on, we grew up on, we love the Cosby Show. We remember A Different World. It's a different world from where we come from. It's a different generation's experience and expectation. But then in a prior generation, there was Good Times, right? Good Times tied to Cabrini Green on the north side of Chicago, outside the Montgomery wards. We called it Monkey Wards back in the day. Headquarters. Ain't we lucky we got them? Good Times. That somehow or other we are expected to make economic injustice look like it's acceptable. And so if you escape it, then you have to take on a different mindset and a different presentation so
Moving
that
on
you
up.
can move on up, right?
Oh, Lord have mercy. Here you go.
Right. So, and the way to escape the white hostility of All in the Family and Archie Bunker living next door is somehow you have to present that you can assimilate and accommodate so that you can move on up and then have a different level of conversation that is detached from the reality of ain't we lucky we got them good times. And so it is part of the truth of our narrative that if we're going to tell this, we got to talk about the essence of it and not just the appearance of it, because at the core, the seam that runs through all of it is the creative resilience of what I will just go ahead and call, on behalf of James Baldwin, the unique genius of Blackness. That the essence of being able to overcome oppression and opposition in ways that somehow or other, sometimes it makes it look a little too easy, and so therefore we're made to handle it more. No, that's not it. There's something at our core that allows us to do it, that exemplifies and examines and provides an example to others that they too can rise above it, but they have to be serious about it.
Atiba? Yeah, I think, Reverend Yuri, I feel like you were sticking and moving on that one. That was very, very good how you just did that. It makes me think of Maya Angelou. When she wrote, "You write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me down in the very dirt, but still I rise." That's what I think that we have to get to. We've got to keep telling our stories so that it lifts us. And in lifting us, we lift everyone else. We consistently have been the ones that have torn down the barriers of inclusion in this country. And so we have to recognize and embrace the fact that, yes, it is a heavy burden that we carry. But why do we carry this burden? Because they came and they took the best of us from Africa, and the worst of them came from England. So, some people don't want to necessarily look at that, but the way you can define it is to say, well, they came here and look at what happened to the country. This country has the best opportunities. It offers the best opportunities, but yet it continues to create barriers of inclusion. Why? Because there are some that recognize when they have to compete on a level playing field, they can't win. They lose their jobs. That's why they excluded us from baseball. They excluded us from sports. My mother and I were just talking about this the other day. She said, just look at how when they excluded us from sports and when they let us in, what happened. Now they try to exclude us from ownership. So, we've got to recognize that. Why are they doing these things? Why did they burn down Rosewood? Why did they burn down Tulsa? Why? Because we were doing so well that they recognized they couldn't compete with us. We have to recognize that there is something in that within us is greatness, and we have to tap into that and make ourselves understand that we are not just great, but that we can be great for everyone else, and that they too can benefit. That's why they have jazz. That's why they have hip hop. That's why we keep creating, and we keep letting other people take our thunder. And we've got to make sure that they see our lightning.
I just want to add this. We have about 1 minute and 30 seconds before the end of our show. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me, but it can keep him from lynching me." And I think that's pretty important. I want to say that in the absence of the law, it's me versus 1 million Americans, or my neighbors, 350 million Americans, asking for forgiveness. That's impractical. I go to the President of the United States under the Founders system, and I ask him to forgive me on behalf of the American people, so I don't have to ask everyone individually. That's the system we live in. That's the pardon process. So the law does matter. And whether my neighbor in Chicago likes me or loves me, or whether my neighbor in Los Angeles or my neighbor in Baltimore, my neighbor in Washington, D.C. likes or loves me, the constraint is the law. You can't lynch me, whether I'm in any of these states. You can't treat me differently under the citizenship rights of the Constitution in any of these states. From my perspective, the law does matter, even in the ethic of how we treat people individually. And I'm not suggesting that either of my hosts are saying that's not true. I'm just simply saying that I'm not giving up on fighting for America. I know Atiba's not. I know Reverend Yuri isn't, in terms of how we see the law. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Until next time, KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, it will be tomorrow.
KBLA 1580.
I'm Tammy Eswick with BIN News Now. Former President Barack Obama